Romeo and Juliet, Act 2 Summary. Act 2 Prologue. As the second act begins, the chorus enters again, delivering another sonnet, this time explaining how Romeo's love for Rosaline has now faded, and that his new love for Juliet will cause complications for the couple. In the final rhyming couplet of the sonnet, Shakespeare writes, "But passion lends them power, time means to meet, tempering extremities with extreme sweet." Here he credits their passion for one another as giving them power to overcome the obstacles of family feuds and expectations. Furthermore, Shakespeare also suggests that they have time to savour and enjoy their new love, hinting at some of the romantic scenes that will follow. Act 2, Scene 1. Romeo has left the Capulet ball with new knowledge that Juliet, his love, is a Capulet. With a sudden urge to meet Juliet again, he climbs over the orchard wall into the garden. Benvolio and Mercutio enter, calling out for Romeo. He does not answer, and the pair decide to give up their search, commenting that it is foolish to look for someone who does not wish to be found. Act 2, Scene 2. Romeo makes his way through the orchard towards the Capulet house, and suddenly notices light from an upstairs window. Expectant of Juliet's arrival, Romeo says, "It is the east, and Juliet is the sun." Juliet then appears at the window, and Romeo is eager to speak with her, but waits and continues to rhapsodize about her beauty. Unaware of Romeo's presence, Juliet speaks of the news that Romeo is a Montague, and questions, "Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo?" Or, "Why are you Romeo?" expressing her frustration that her love is a Montague. She then begins to question the importance of the name Montague, and suggests if Romeo were to refuse his family name, she too would give up hers to be with him. At this, Romeo responds to her, expressing that henceforth I never will be Romeo. Juliet is startled by Romeo's presence, initially questioning how he came to her and warning him of the danger if he is caught. Romeo is undeterred, however, and claims that love will protect him from any danger. Juliet then questions if Romeo's love is true and reliable, and Romeo responds by swearing his love by the blessed moon. Then Juliet quickly interrupts him, saying that the moon is inconstant and therefore unreliable. She then expresses her fear that things are moving too fast and bids him good night. Romeo is not satisfied and instead proposes that they marry. The nurse begins to call for Juliet and she exits, returning a few seconds later to tell Romeo that if he truly means to marry her, to send word for her tomorrow, and she will arrange to meet him. The nurse continues to call, and Juliet again exits, only to return to arrange a time when her messenger should call on Romeo. They agree on 9 o'clock, then continue to utter loving words to each other before eventually parting. To analyse this scene, consider how Shakespeare presents the couple's blossoming romance. Romeo's language is full of imagery of nature, which expresses his idealistic vision of love. He compares Juliet to the sun in the line, "It is the east and Juliet is the sun." The metaphor uses the sun, an object which gives light, life, and hope to humanity. Through this comparison, Shakespeare reveals how Romeo is captivated by Juliet. He sees her, like the sun, as a heavenly being who brings warmth and hope to his life. A second moment to study in closer depth is Juliet's frustration with Romeo's insistence on using natural imagery. Juliet responds to Romeo's language with frustration. She instructs him, "Oh, swear not by the moon, the inconstant moon that monthly changes in her circled orb," essentially picking holes in his romantic language and asking him to speak more plainly. To Juliet, the moon is symbolic of impermanence and is a sign of unreliability. She asks Romeo if he too will prove changeable in a direct and critical tone, which presents her as more careful and circumspect than Romeo. By this, Shakespeare proves Juliet's intelligence, which endears her to the audience, who would see her confidence as more than a match for Romeo's passion. Act 2, Scene 3. The following morning, Friar Lawrence is collecting plants in a basket and considering how nature is powerful. He reflects on the good and evil inside humans. Romeo then enters and tells the friar he has fallen in love with Juliet and wishes to marry her. The friar is initially shocked at how quickly Romeo has shifted his affection from Rosaline to Juliet, and comments how young love is fickle. But Romeo argues against this, commenting that Juliet returns his love where Rosaline did not. The friar considers that the match may possibly heal the terrible rift between the two houses, so he consents to marry them. The friar is an important character in the play, and acts as a foil to Romeo's character. Where Romeo is impulsive and dramatic, the friar seems wise and cautious. He plays a father figure to Romeo, and his actions present the opportunity for their love to progress. In the lines, "For this allegiance may so happy prove, to turn your household's rancour to pure love," Shakespeare uses a rhyming couplet, which hints at his belief in the completeness of Romeo and Juliet's love. Furthermore, the use of oxymoron with the contrasting words rancour, meaning bitterness, and love, recall the language of the prologue, which predicts the end to the family's feud through Romeo and Juliet's death-marked love, reminding us that the path of true love is often complex and conflict may again rear its head as events move forward. Act 2, Scene 4. Benvolio and Mercutio enter and discuss what happened to Romeo after the Capulet ball, suspecting he is still chasing after Rosaline. Benvolio then mentions a letter Tybalt has sent to the Montague house, which Mercutio suggests could be a challenge to a duel. The pair then discuss how Romeo would fare in a fight with Tybalt. Benvolio defends Romeo's character, while Mercutio raves about Tybalt's skill with the sword, claiming he is the very butcher of a silk button, a duellist, a duellist. Romeo enters and claims he avoided them both due to important business. At this, Mercutio jokes with Romeo that his business must have strained his legs, implying he was with a woman, and the pair exchange a series of sexual jokes, before Mercutio comments on Romeo's improved mood. Finally, the nurse enters with Peter, the Capulet servant. Mercutio teases the nurse, joking about her intentions, but she tells him off for his rudeness and asks to speak to Romeo alone. The nurse tells Romeo that Juliet sent her with a message, but she is protective, warning Romeo, "If ye should lead her in a fool's paradise, as they say, it were a very gross kind of behaviour." Romeo assures the nurse his love is true and asks her to tell Juliet to make an excuse to attend confession in the afternoon so they can meet with Friar Lawrence, who will marry them. This scene serves to orchestrate the plot so that Romeo and Juliet can marry. However, it is the wordplay of Mercutio that drives the tension in the scene. It leads the nurse to question Romeo's trustworthiness, and in the line, "If ye should lead her in a fool's paradise," it characterises the nurse as a protective and motherly figure in Juliet's life. Furthermore, the oxymoron expresses the conflict of her doubts and fears, which shifts the mood to one of earnestness, as Romeo assures her his feelings are true. Act 2, Scene 5. Back at the Capulet house, Juliet impatiently waits for the nurse, stating that, had she affections and warm youthful blood, she would be as swift in motion as a ball. The nurse returns, and Juliet desperately asks for news of Romeo, but the nurse is not in a hurry, claiming she is tired. Juliet's impatience grows, until eventually the nurse explains that if she has permission to leave to give confession, Romeo will meet her at Friar Lawrence's cell so they can be married. Juliet blushes with excitement and exits to meet Romeo. In this scene, Shakespeare cleverly juxtaposes Juliet's youthful passion and excitement with the nurse's age and experience. Juliet's line, "I pray thee speak, good nurse," uses repetition to capture Juliet's eagerness and anxiety. Yet the nurse responds with a haughty question, "Do you not see that I am out of breath?" expressing the conflict of age and perhaps the nurse's reluctance to lose Juliet. It is probable that Shakespeare contrasts their moods for comedic effect, yet there is a sense that the nurse is still cautious about the match. Shakespeare explores the theme of innocence and experience here, presenting the conflict between the protectiveness of elders and the passion of youth. Act 2, Scene 6. Romeo and Friar Lawrence wait for Juliet at the friar's cell. Romeo tells the friar that he is not afraid of any sorrows which may come in the future, because the joy he feels now is enough. However, the friar cautions Romeo to love moderately, if he wishes their love to last. Juliet arrives and embraces Romeo. They depart to be wed, as the friar states the Holy Church will incorporate two in one. The exchange between Romeo and the friar in this scene parallels the conflict between youth and experience shown between Juliet and the nurse in the previous scene. Romeo's confidence in the power of his emotion leads him to claim he does not even fear death. Yet the friar's response is cautious. He warns, "These violent delights have violent ends, and in their triumph die like fire and powder." The repetition of the adjective violent foreshadows the trouble that almost immediately follows Romeo and Juliet's union, and speaks of the friar's wisdom in his concern for Romeo's unbridled passion. Additionally, he compares love to gunpowder in the phrase fire and powder, which again serves as a reminder to the audience that Romeo and Juliet's love perhaps burns too bright to last.